Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome back. It is FPC Radio Live. It's Tuesday, December the 12th. It's 12/12, John. 12/12. You know what that means, right? It's
Aaron Rodgers Day.
You know,
that was the August 8th, actually.
Well, I as soon as I paused there, I realized in my head, I was like, oh, I think I just opened the door for him. And there you were, quick-witted. I should have kept your mic muted. Should have kept you muted, but no, it is Tom Brady Day, as it is every day in my life. But today, especially, and then more especially on June 12th of next year, of course. But no, I mean, obviously, it's 12. Anytime 12 comes into play, it's Tom Brady related. So actually, it's Tom Brady month. Actually, December makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Exactly.
I mean, they were always really good in December, closing out the deal. Getting ready for the playoffs, going on a run. So kind of makes sense.
Someone was born in December that people put right alongside Brady as their savior.
Oh,
so
yeah, right. That's
we're with that.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Where's he's he might be cleared to play soon. Which first of all, John, who's clearing him to play? Dr. Nick? Like, come on, like the guy's almost he did turn 40, so or 39. What is it? How old is he? I don't even know.
He's 40. He turned 40 earlier this month.
Yeah, exactly. He's 40. That's what I thought. I thought maybe the ayahuasca may have taken a year off his life or something like that. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I was thinking of Brady when I brought that up, though. Brady and someone else that has a birthday. Well, Brady's birthday is in August, but obviously someone else that's maybe even above Brady was born on the 25th or whatever day, depending on what stories you believe. But there's a lot of great 12s, though, right? I mean, you got Brady, you got Rodgers, you got Bradshaw, you got Staubach, you got a lot of guys that won Super Bowls that wore 12. Bob Greasy, also number 12.
No, I mean it's a great quarterback number. It's a great quarterback number.
Oh, yeah, 16 really good. Obviously Montana, but 12 is the number. It's got the most Super Bowls. I mean,
and that's why it's just an iconic number. That's why it's like you'll never see it like retire. That's why football numbers don't necessarily get retired, obviously, because the dynamic and the number of the number of actual players on a team would be kind of foolish to retire numbers. But 12 is obviously very iconic. Look, you're probably not going to see someone wear the jersey 12 in a Patriots uniform. I don't know if they'll quote unquote retire the number. They might. They might, John, actually. Like individual franchises, I think. Yeah, no, I think the Patriots
would. Should. If they're going to retire any number,
should
be that one.
Yeah.
I always push back when people say, well, the league should retire the number. And I'm like, no. The league should not. The only numbers that should be retired in a league, like Jackie Robinson, I mean, it was more than just the sport itself. Like, there's no one in football that's comparable to Jackie Robinson.
Right.
Well, Babe Ruth, or anybody like that in terms of saving a sport or saving society or being that impactful to society. So Jim Brown, 32 is a great number. 12 is a great number. Those are your two guys that we would put at the top of the list. But I wouldn't retire it league-wide. Absolutely not. But the Patriots should absolutely retire. I mean, all the value, a lot of the value that Robert Kraft has in Bill Belichick's bank account are tied directly to number 12.
Well, and look, I mean, and it's like, it sounds like, oh, that's of course they will. Well, I mean, it's like you see practice squad guys out there wearing 87 all the time. You know what I mean? It's like they don't necessarily care too much about but Brady's obviously different. Anyway, so last night though we had a couple interesting results. Certainly not what I expected. But it was all overshadowed by Chiefs fans continuing to complain, John. It's crazy. It drives me nuts. No. Did
they hinder you from watching the game? You were that distracted that you couldn't watch.
Well, every time I look on Twitter and I see a Kansas City Chiefs fan account proclaiming that Mahomes was just trying to bring attention to bad officiating, I laughed so hard that I missed like 6 plays. I couldn't bring myself together to actually focus back on the game. So yes, it did kind of impact my viewing of last night's action, which was entertaining. Interesting.
We're going to have to put you on a time limit each day for Twitter. Like, like a 13-year-old can only have the phone for so much. We're going to have to do that with you. 1 hour a day of Twitter, and then that's it.
Yeah, well, that would obviously that would do leaps and bounds for my mental health. I would no doubt about that. I actually want to do that regardless. But I have enjoyed because I said it here yesterday. And if there's any Chiefs fans listening, like, yeah, let the guy take his licks, man. It does you no good to sit there and continue. I mean, we're 2 days later, John, and there are still people just ranting and raving. I mean, I've seen so many screenshots of different teams and first down marking lines that I hope they know don't actually exist on the football field and are only a TV thing.
Mhm.
But I've seen so many of those over the last couple lines, and at the end of the day, John, that doesn't change the fact that they still had opportunities after that play to win the game, and they had that drive prior to that where they promptly went 3-0. So look, you're complaining because maybe in a way, John, and this is what I think is going on right now. Subconsciously, they don't want to approach the actual issues this team has, and it's not just the wide receivers, John. The quarterback has some to blame too, because he just hasn't been that good this season. And I know they can't bring themselves to accept it, but that's the reality of it. And that's why this Chiefs team is, well, we're going to do our top 5 teams later. And I can't, I mean, as tough as it was to find 5 top teams, I don't even think I consider Kansas City as one of them for a second. So, that's what they're trying to reconcile right now. And I think it's leading to some emotional responses over this whole officiating thing, which I happen to find pretty funny at times because, like I said, I'm a funny guy, or at least I appreciate humor. I'm funny to myself.
And to be, like Joe Pesci
Yes.
and Goodfellas, who, by the way, was Tommy DeVito.
Right. Tommy DeVito had a pretty darn good game last night.
Did.
I know you were cheering him.
Oh, yeah. It's always good when Paisans are really good at quarterback. And, we've had 2 all-time great quarterbacks that are Italian-American, right? Joe Montana and Dan Marino.
Right,
and maybe
right.
we'll claim Aaron Rodgers because we don't even know if he talks to his family. So maybe he is Italian-American. Maybe he was adopted.
Yeah, there you go. You're just going to claim him. Why not? No one else has.
No one wants him.
Yeah.
His own family, and he doesn't want his family, so he's an orphan, and I'm here to, bring him in.
There you go. So, but anyways, no, last night, obviously, the Titans and Giants surprised the Dolphins and Packers. The Packers maybe like 4 or 5 weeks ago, if you told me the Giants beat the Packers, it probably wouldn't be too much of a surprise. But the Packers have been playing some really good football over the last month and a half. So this was definitely a little bit of a hiccup, certainly against a team that's a little bit closer to the number 1 overall seed than they are to the playoff positioning. But it's for Miami, it's like I looked at we talked about this going into it, and it's like, okay, we saw Tennessee as kind of a they're not a good team. I mean, does it mean they're not capable of winning games? Absolutely not. We've seen that before, but I certainly thought this was going to be a Miami offensive show, and it just didn't happen. And look, I mean, you look at the landscape of the AFC, and who do you trust?
No one right now.
No one.
I know Baltimore looks like the best team in the AFC for sure, but they were back and forth with the Rams on Sunday, and you still question if Lamar has enough on the outside to help him. If Baltimore had Mark Andrews healthy, and maybe he comes back at the end of the season, he suffered a really bad ankle injury a few weeks ago, then maybe Baltimore's the clear-cut favorite because that's his favorite target. They have a really good defense, and they've got a great kicker. If it comes down to kickers, which sometimes it does, they have a guy that you trust. Maybe they're the team, but I still think they have plenty of question marks. I don't see anybody in the AFC that looks like a lock right now. That's why you still kind of have to think of the Chiefs, who are playing horrible football. Not horrible football, but they're 2-4 in the last 6. And here's the Dolphins with a chance to get right even with the Ravens for the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're at home. They hadn't lost at home all year. They hadn't even been in close games all year at home. The Titans had won on the road. It looks like a layup, although I did like the Titans with the points because they can run the football and they're physical and all that stuff, and yada, yada, yada. The Titans pull off a win. The Titans turned the ball over 3 times within their own 15-yard line, which led to 21 points, and the Dolphins still couldn't win with that.
Yeah.
Probably what a gift, or 3 gifts.
Well, it's like, look, I mean, if it was ever apparent that that the Super Bowl champion, I mean, it seems very apparent that the Super Bowl champion is eventually going to come from the NFC, because no matter who right now, even Baltimore, no matter who comes out of that conference, am I giving them a chance against the 49ers? Absolutely not.
You wouldn't give the Ravens a chance against the 49ers?
No. Because
they're going to play later in the season, so we'll get a little test of that. But
because I'm looking at the Ravens, and it's like, as much as I want to, trust me, I picked them before the season to go to the Super Bowl, so I want, you know what I mean? Like I want to be right. Trust me, I throw me a bone here. Like
self-serving guy, you.
Yes, absolutely.
In this business, we all are.
Exactly.
I'm rooting for Cincinnati to win the AFC and Dallas to win the NFC.
I know. You're still hanging on to it. It's like, well, at least your Dallas pick is pretty good. But look, I mean, the Ravens, I mean, there's just something I feel like is missing. Like, as great as Lamar Jackson has played, he hasn't. You know what? It's like, again, it's just no one's really taken a stranglehold of this conference. And that's something that we're used to seeing for the longest time, is eventually the good teams. Now, it may not always be pretty, but you know what they do well. What do the Ravens do well? Well, they do win games. I feel like I'm not trying to take it away from them, but I just don't know if like, do you think Lamar Jackson is having a great season?
No. That's why I always, push back when people said he's the leader among MVP candidates. He's sensational. He again wins games. That's obviously very important. He can win in multiple ways, but no, he's not having the same year that Dak Prescott's having, who to me is clearly the MVP with 28 touchdown passes and only 6 interceptions. So Baltimore plays really good defense. Now, is that enough to carry you over the finish line and win a Super Bowl?
I don't think so.
Probably not. You're going to have a game where you're going to have to score. Look, they had to put up 37 to win on Sunday, and they won it on a walk-off punt return for a touchdown. That generally doesn't happen all that often. So good for them. Their special teams have always been pretty good because John Harbaugh is a special teams coach. But yeah, I mean, offensively, it still seems somewhat wonky. And the thing that always concerns me about the Ravens is they always have like one bad quarter in some of these big games. I mean, I just go back to last year when they were blowing out Miami, and then in the fourth quarter, Miami scored 5 touchdowns, which almost seems impossible.
Yeah.
Like this was no turnovers. It was all on offense. How do you even get 5 possessions to score 5 touchdowns? So it just seems like maybe they're not good at situational football. Maybe that's what I'm getting at, where,
that's not
when you're up
good for,
and that's not good in the playoffs. No, that's not good in the playoffs. That's what the Patriots are so good at. And yes, give Kansas City credit. They did win the Super Bowl last year. 3 close games. They played situational football pretty well. And that maybe is what separated them from everyone else in winning that championship. So that's my only concern with Baltimore. I don't know how their situational football is. And that's, look, when it's that close with these teams, again, there's no team in the league that's like the 1989 49ers, who were just way better than everybody. Yeah. There's no one like that. I mean, as great as the Patriots were in winning those Super Bowls, they won a lot on the margins. They had the greatest quarterback ever. They had a great coach, and they played great situational football. They weren't just stampeding through the playoffs like the 85 Bears or the 89.
Part of that too is, John, that, and we're seeing this now, especially in the AFC, is that the competition was better. I mean, when your rival is Peyton Manning and the Colts, yeah, it's going to be tough to stampede through, know. And then when your second rival is Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers, and then you have that great Ravens defense with Ray Lewis and all those guys. You know what I mean? There's you look at the AFC now, and it's like, well, Justin Herbert looks like he's going in for surgery. He's going to be done for the year. Trevor Lawrence looks like just a guide, in my opinion. There's nothing he's done for me. Flashy plays don't mean nothing to me. I want consistency and I want eliteness, and I just haven't seen it from him. You look at we talk about it all the time. If Josh Allen can just stop with the stupid mistakes, but it's like, look, it's year 5, year 6. Like, how long is it going to take for him to get this out of his system? Or is it just part of his game, which ultimately is going to hold him back, from being, another level of elite? So it's like, okay, Tua looked, well, not average, but certainly a lot less without Tyreek Hill when he wasn't out there. You know what I mean? So it's like, where's that competition? Where's that, so for me, if any year there should be a runaway favorite in the AFC, it should be this year, because you think, okay, well, maybe it would have been the Chiefs or maybe the Ravens if Lamar Jackson was having an actual MVP like season, but he's just not. He's playing pretty good. And I don't know if that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. It might be good enough to get to a Super Bowl this year in the AFC for sure, but to go up against San Francisco and even Dallas, I wouldn't give him a shot.
Really, I think they'd have a shot only because I don't again, Brock Purdy is
maybe
a question mark.
against
So,
Dallas. I would give them a shot against Dallas,
'cause
not San
Dallas does have
Francisco.
a tendency
Yeah.
of letting the other team stay in the game, and I mean, San Francisco does look like the best team right now,
And look,
provided they remain healthy.
They've been there. There are players on this team that have played in the Super Bowl. This isn't a team that's new to success. So yeah, I wouldn't give him a shot against the 49ers. Dallas, yeah, because well, Dallas hasn't played past the divisional round in 30 years. So the pressure might get to them eventually.
Don't exaggerate. It's only 28.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
You were like 9 the last time
they
played in the
crazy.
conference championship game. I was still 32. So
I remember watching that too, though. That was some of my early years of watching football. Were
they beat the Packers in the NFC Championship game in 1995.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I watched that game.
Yep. Those were good matchups.
It was fun. It forged my love of football. I got in early 90s, when I was like 8. When you were first kind of impressed, when you could first appreciate some of the things you were watching, you can kind of remember too. You know what I mean?
That's about the right age, 7, 8. You start.
Yeah.
Like my first sports memory, this is how old I am, is Bobby Orr and the Boston Bruins winning the Stanley Cup in 1970. So,
I thought you were going to say
for 54 years.
The Olympics from
perfect game. And yes,
in like ancient Greek. No, and I'm not talking about the one from like recently. I'm talking about like the actual ancient Greek Olympics.
1896. Yes, the original Olympic
long
game.
Before that.
Even before, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about,
BC or whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Much there.
Height of the Roman Empire.
I did not see Jesse Owens, win gold medals at the Munich game. And, no, I missed that one. But, so I think 7 or 8 you start to do it. And back then, Ian, it was strictly the NFC that dominated. From 1981 through 1996, so 16 years, the NFC won the Super Bowl 15 times.
Yeah.
The only interloper was the 83 Raiders. Every other year, the NFC won, and the games weren't generally close. Like, I mean, we saw the Patriots, 46-10 losing to the Bears. Yeah. I mean, Patriots are somewhat close against the Packers, 35-21 they lost, but the average margin was like over 20 points. The games were over by halftime, it felt like. The halftime show was the end of the night, and now at least we see a lot of close Super Bowls. It's just the way the league is now. I mean, free agency had something to do with that. And then I think, believe it or not, I think I don't know how to put this without giving a backhanded compliment, but I think there are more franchises that are better run than maybe back then because the teams are, because a lot of money is invested. So they'll make moves. Like back then, the coach stayed with the team for 10 years. Even
free agency.
Awful.
Free agency.
Free agency is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and obviously that was well in place by the 90s, but, it still took time for things to kind of develop. I mean, certainly it just doesn't overnight become what it is now, where it's like, players are jumping from team to team and all that. I mean, it took some time. I mean, one of the reasons why the 49ers stayed together for so long, and do all that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how it plays out. Like I said, I did prior to the season pick the Ravens and the 49ers, and that looks as good as any.
Looks good.
For a pick. I'm far more confident in the 49ers. Although I think they have probably the stiffest competition in their own conference, with obviously Dallas and even the Eagles, even though they're stumbling a little bit. So we'll see what happens. But I must say, before we're going to do our top 5 teams before we end the day here, but I will say one more time, Chiefs fans, just let it go. Move on with your lives. Focus on the things that they need to do on the football field, and there's plenty of them to make them a better team, and stop worrying about the right call that was made and wondering why it was unfair for you. So, all right, top 5 teams. This was a struggle, John. I'm not gonna lie. I almost couldn't find 5 teams that warranted being a top 5. I almost made it top 4. But
not much more.
But I did manage to find a 5th team. Now, somewhat surprising too, John. It might shock you a little bit, but
I'm wondering if it's going to be the same as mine. But go ahead.
Yeah, is it maybe there's maybe we're thinking similarly here, because I look across the landscape. I told you I didn't even consider putting the Chiefs in my top 5 because it's why? Why should I? They've lost 4 out of their last 6 games. They haven't, this isn't they've lost some close, tight games. Like, yeah, the one against Buffalo was close, but they just didn't look good in the process, and they haven't really looked good in a long time. My number 5 team, John, Denver Broncos.
Well, great minds do think alike.
Wow. Okay, we are on the same page here, because I look at it and I say, all right, the winners of 6 of the last 7. They've beaten the Packers, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Vikings, the Browns. Good defense. They lost a pretty close one to the Texans, and they just beat the Chargers 24-7. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a team in the AFC right now that's been playing better, consistent football than the Denver Broncos. And right before that stretch happened, they lost a very close game, 19-8 to the Chiefs. So for the better part of the last 2+ months, they've looked like one of the better teams in the AFC. And look, I've been highly critical of this team, of the quarterback, of everything involved with this for a while. I mean, I've obviously turned the page over the last few weeks. I thought their defense has been playing really well. But I'm looking across the league and I'm like, who else right now deserves to be top 5? Not the Lions.
No.
Not
Jacksonville.
Not Jacksonville.
Kansas City.
Not Kansas City.
Miami is 9-4, but that was an awful loss last night.
They're not going to. I don't care what their record is. They're not going to sniff my top 5 until they, they gotta prove it a little bit more. We suspected that they tend to beat up a little bit on bad teams, and there's really been nothing to convince me otherwise that is just all they are right now. So an explosive.
I'm with you on Denver. It's number 5. Yeah, I'm with you because their defense is really elevated. Russell Wilson's had a nice season. Sean Payton, we know, can coach. I mean, he's a bit full of himself, but the guy is an accomplished NFL head coach. And the first month of the season was a disaster. But like you said, in the last month and a half, 2 months, who's playing better than them? They've won 6 out of 7. Their only loss came against Houston in Houston, and they were this close to pulling that game out. If Russell Wilson doesn't throw an interception at the end, they'd be on a 7-game winning streak against some good competition. Like you said, they won at Buffalo. They beat Kansas City. Minnesota's not a bad team. Green Bay's pretty good. So, yeah, I have them at number 5 as well. I mean, this could be the year in that Denver and Buffalo, sneak into the playoffs and end up meeting for the AFC Championship game, both at 10-7. And that wouldn't surprise me.
Look, it could be, because it's I mean, if the Chiefs and Broncos met this week, I'd pick the Broncos. That's even coming off of back-to-back losses where you're like, oh my God, you can't pick the Chiefs to lose 3 in a row. Well, I mean, they're just playing better right now. And look, John, they're 7-6 and the Chiefs are 8-5 now. It's still kind of a hurdle with only just a few games left to possibly see them leapfrog the Chiefs for the division, but. Look, if the Patriots can somehow score some points, I wouldn't actually put it past them to beat the Chiefs because of their defense and how they've played Kansas City in the past, and has had some success neutralizing that offense. And that was when they were far better. Now they are literally middle of the pack. There is nothing special about this Kansas City offense. So, if the Patriots can score a couple points, maybe we put them on upset alert again, and that opens the door for Denver. But this isn't a case, John, though. I want to be clear. This isn't a case of we had to find a team. It felt like I had to find a team to put number 5. But the more I looked at it, I was like, you know what? No, I think Denver really does deserve to be here. So,
yeah, you can't just look at the 5 best records in football and make them your top 5 teams, because some teams just aren't playing well. Like you said, Detroit and Miami are not playing at the level that we would have hoped they had played at if they were really contenders. Jacksonville as well, and teams that have better records than Denver. But right now, Denver's playing better than any of those teams.
Right. Exactly. And look, if you were to say Miami and Denver rematch, I'd take Denver. And I know we saw 70-20. That was kind of the big deal earlier in the season, but that was a long, long time ago. So, all right.
And that's a revenge game if we've ever seen one, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, all right. My number 4 team, the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a team that's, I don't want to quite say is in a free fall right now. But they have not had a good couple weeks. And, they're if you were to ask me 3 weeks ago, who is probably the most complete team. I mean, obviously the 49ers would be mentioned, but the Eagles would be right there with them. Since then, they've been kind of dismantled by the other two best teams in that conference, the 49ers and the Cowboys. So very, very tenuous grasp on being in this top five right now for the Eagles because, they lose another game and then, you start to really question how good this team really is because again, earlier in the season, we thought this was a pretty good team. They were winning a lot of close games, but we felt, well, this is just a team that knows how to win. It's not always going to be pretty, but they know how to win. Well, they forgot how to win the last few weeks, and if that continues, it's going to be a very short postseason for them.
Their pass defense is awful, and Jalen Hurts is not having the year he had last year. He looks kind of beat up a little bit, and it's a physical style that he plays. The offensive line is still outstanding, but it's old. So that's always a concern as you get late in the season. I'm with you. Number 4. I almost have a funny feeling we're going to agree in the exact order of the top 5. There might be one difference, 2 and 3, but I also have Philadelphia at number 4.
Yeah, and look, I mean once you do get later in the season, it does narrow down the field of teams to be put into this list. But this year it's kind of a little tricky because there are a lot of just unique situations or whatever. So anyways, my number 3 team, and this is going to pretty much determine whether or not we're going to be in sync the whole time. I got the Baltimore Ravens. And, we talked about it earlier, like they've played some good football. They're winning games, but it's not dominant and it's not something that you're going to go bet the house on and on any given week this postseason. And certainly not in the Super Bowl if their opponent happens to be the Cowboys or the 49ers, especially, like I said earlier, the 49ers. But, when push comes to shove, they're the number 1 seed in the AFC East or AFC right now. They have the most wins. And, when you break it down, they played the best. And again, it's more relative to what we've seen this year in that conference. Would they be an elite team in some previous years? Probably not. But this year, sure. I mean, you got to put the Ravens up there. And like I said, my rooting interest is to see them win because that would mean I would be right preseason. So
there you go. Well, I'm probably agreeing with your preseason pick even more than you because I have Dallas, which was my NFC champion pick before the season started. I have them at number 3 because I just can't, and it did happen, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
I can't get that loss to San Francisco out of my mind, 42-10. Now, they're a better team now than they were at that point. And you do want to kind of rank these teams on how they're playing right now. And Dallas looks really good, but I have Dallas at number 3, thus Baltimore at number 2. So I'm sure we're kind of flip-flopping those two positions.
Well, to full disclosure, I mean, I'm looking at my list right now, and I actually originally had the Ravens at 2. I crossed them out and put the Cowboys in there. So we were very close to being pretty much in sync. So yeah, my number 2 team would be the Cowboys. And look, I mean, I have the same concerns you have. I mean, you still can't get that lot, and that's one of the reasons why, I think our shared number 1 team is very clearly the number 1 team in the league. The Cowboys and another team I've been highly critical of, just like Denver, mostly because of the quarterback and kind of their tendency to kind of shrink in the spotlight. But after a while, you can't kind of ignore that they keep winning football games. And like you said, Dak Prescott looks like very clearly right now. It's funny how muddied the water was just a couple weeks ago, and now it seems pretty clear who the MVP favorite is. There's really no discussion. I mean, you can sit here and talk about Christian McCaffrey and he'll get some juice, but the Tyreek Hill stuff is probably done. There's no other quarterback that's going to catch Dak right now in terms of making the case. I mean, Brock Purdy will get some love, but like at the end of the day, John, him and Christian McCaffrey kind of take it away from each other,
Right. You don't know who the MVP of the 49ers really is. It's those two guys, and I'm obviously always pumping the tires of Trent Williams. But yeah, I mean, that offense is just, it's an all-pro offense is what it is. So, you might have 4 all-pros on that offense, right? If Purdy's if Prescott's the MVP, he'll be first-team all-pro, but Purdy will be second-team all-pro. McCaffrey's certainly first-team all-pro along with Trent Williams, and Debo is such a unique player. He lost some time, and again, it's tough to plant Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. Those have been the 2 best receivers in football this year. But you get my point. There's just so much talent there. They might split the vote, and Dak wins his first MVP. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, all right. So I guess to all the anticipation to find out who our number one team is. It's obvious. It's obviously the 49ers for both of us. Again, you can't just proof is in the pudding, so to speak. I mean, great offense, great defense. I mean, it's been taken to, I don't want to say another level, but it's been reinforced with the acquisition of Chase Young, and look, they're just a really good team, John. And if they can't win a Super Bowl this season, I'm convinced they're never going to win it. I mean, because like how many, like if you were going to ask what team over the last decade you would expect that should have a Super Bowl championship but doesn't, 49ers easily. Mm-hmm. And not just this year or last year or a couple of years ago. It was in 2013 or 2014. This team has been the preeminent future Super Bowl champion for a decade now, and they haven't been able to pull it off. And this year, more than any, between how good they are, their quarterback, their defense, and just the landscape of the NFL in general. Like they don't have to go, like as good as San Francisco was, if they happen to go up against the Bucks and Brady, you're still not going to bet the house on the 49ers because you never know. But they don't have that in the NFC right now. You don't have that.
Or Seattle a decade ago when they lost the NFC Championship game, a close game in Seattle. Right. Exactly.
So either way.
Well, the thing about San Francisco, the 49ers to me are football's version of the Celtics. Like the Celtics are the best team in basketball.
No, that's a good
time to win. It's time to win. And they kind of a similar track record the last 4 years, right? They've each lost in a championship round.
Mm-hmm.
The 49ers to the Chiefs after having a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. The Celtics to the Warriors after being up 2-1. They both lost in conference championship games that they probably should have won, and they didn't. So, yeah, I mean, it's very, very similar. It's time for the 49ers and Celtics to get it right and win a championship because the window can only stay open so long. I mean, I think the Celtics maybe have a longer window because of their players are young and they're retaining their players. Football's tough to keep that roster together. I mean, at some point, Brock Purdy's going to be looking for money. What do you do at that point? So,
and look,
Chase
I
Young, they keep Chase Young. That's going to cost.
And John, and this is the elephant in the room. It's the regression, and we're seeing it from every single quarterback in the league.
Mm-hmm.
What we never saw was regression from Tom Brady, and that's and again, that's the problem that people can't. He's different. Let's stop comparing him or putting him as the standard for every quarterback. Okay, because like that's why people like look. Patrick Mahomes has regressed. Look at the numbers. Look at the performance. It's just natural, and we've seen that across the league. John, Josh Allen hit a peak. Jalen Hurts, he had a peak last year. He's regressed this year. Trevor Lawrence, I never really reached this level. Who else am I missing here in terms of
Joe Burrow? But again, this has been injury.
But that's part of it, John. Though that's part of the factors. Like, I mean, at a certain point, you're like, okay, like I understand. Like some of these injuries are like Rob Gronkowski had some freak injuries. That didn't change the fact that injuries greatly impacted his. I mean, look, he managed to overcome a lot and has had quite the legacy. But I mean, talk about playing the what if game. What if he was healthy for his career? Like,
sure.
Like, I mean, there wouldn't even be I mean, look, I when people say he's the greatest tight end of all time, I'm not going to argue against it, but I'm not necessarily going to. And people are like, wow, you don't think Gronk? I'm like, no, because it's like, look, he was dominant. I mean, maybe the highest peak I think of any tight end in NFL history. But I think it does a disservice to some of certainly the older crowd, the Kellen Winslows of the world, the Mike Ditkas, that type of crowd.
Tony
Gonzalez. Yeah. I mean, again, that's why it's funny when Chiefs fans say, Travis Kelce is the GOAT. I'm like, he's not even the best tight end in your franchise's history.
No, he's not.
Like, let's be honest. I'm not trying to knock the guy, but it's like, all right, he's a big wide receiver. I get it. So he's a proficient, very proficient offensive weapon as a tight end. That's great. But like the tight end position is a hybrid position. It's not a strictly offensive position. So if you want to break it down, well, no, he's not the best tight end of all time or the greatest tight end of all time. And, again, this is, I don't even know where I'm going with this right now, to be honest.
Can I make this comparison?
Sure, go ahead.
In terms of, again, great players. So Bruce Smith is the all-time sacks leader.
Yeah.
Right? Reggie White was better.
Oh, sure.
Because Reggie White was better against the run. You could play him inside. He was just a better player. That's not being disparaging towards Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith was an all-time great, but Reggie White was just better. It just happens that way. I mean, it's again, when we have these comparisons, and yeah, I always think Tony Gonzalez is the greatest tight end. First of all, the guy played like 15 years, never missed a game, was a good run blocker. He wasn't Gronk as a run blocker, but Kansas City always had like really good running games. So give him some credit for that, I guess. Plus, again, the durability and who did he play with at quarterback? Like, again, Kelsey has Mahomes and Gronk had Brady. Awesome. He was playing Trent Green and
Brody
Elvis
Coyle,
Grbac and Matt Ryan, early in his career. Yeah.
Matt Castle.
Coyle. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Brody Coyle. There's a guy who I thought was going to be really good in the NFL, so that's why you don't want to listen to me about quarterbacks. The guy that I thought was going to have a really good career was Ricky Stanzi, who played at Iowa. And I remember when he came out, I go, this guy's going to be a left-handed Tom Brady. Well, I was wrong about that. I was way wrong about that.
Well, to be fair, John, anyone who says this person's going to be any Tom Brady has been wrong every single time.
That's why I'm a little hesitant. I call my man Joe Burrow Baby Brady, but I not saying Brady, but Baby Brady.
Well, it's actually good because that helped me recenter myself. It brought me back to what I was. I for a second I thought I forgot what my main point was, and it was talking about regression. I'm like, where am I going with this? We're talking about tight ends now, and I'm like,
right.
Oh, I've lost my train of thought. But no, it was about regression, and it's like, okay, you're seeing that across the board, John, and it's like, if you're going to argue otherwise, then I don't. You're kind of just blind to it, and it's like, okay, this is why you can't project 15 years of success for Patrick Mahomes and say he's on pace to be the GOAT. No. Let him play out his damn career first, and then we can talk about it, or at least get to like I forgot a lot of high school science, so I don't remember exactly what atmospheres and what spheres make up the Earth's atmosphere. There's layers to it, so little different sections. Well, Tom's on the outside looking in. And everyone else is in that first layer of the atmosphere, okay, including Patrick Mahomes. So before you even want to talk about the vastness of space, get out of the atmosphere first. Then we can talk about it. So I'm feeling like I'm
heavy.
Yeah, I'm feeling like Colin Cowherd right now with ridiculous comparisons.
Or Carl Sagan or someone else or some other mystical. But in just closing, one thing is quarterbacks can oftentimes be like baseball players, because baseball players, you see more ups and downs than say NBA players. Like NBA players kind of set a level and they stay there. Like LeBron's 27, 8, and 8 for his entire career. And obviously he's, I think, the greatest player of all time. But Jordan was also a guy that was basically 30, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, like every single year. You don't see that with quarterbacks. There's some ups and downs. Baseball players have incredible ups and downs, except the really greatest of all time, like Barry Bonds. I'll put Albert Pujols and Alex Rodriguez, because those to me are the 3 best players, along with Ken Griffey Jr., top 4 players that I ever saw play. I'm not old enough to say Willie Mays or Henry Aaron, but Brady's the guy who's just always there, right? And Peyton Manning was pretty much the same way, except for his last season. But then he was broken down at that point. So yeah, you don't see that necessarily in quarterbacks. You're going to see some ups and downs. Like Marino never approached 85, 86. Again, the rest of his career. Maybe Mahomes doesn't approach 2018. Mike Trout, the last 4 or 5 years now, he's been injured a lot. I get that, but he hasn't approached what he was his first 7 or 8 years in the league. And everyone was telling me he's going to surpass Barry Bonds. Well, no, he's not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so silly not to let these things play out, because it's like, again, having these conversations just last year about, he's what happened. Like I remember someone asking me, it's like, what if Mahomes gets 6 Super Bowls and he has like 5,000 more passing yards than Brady's career? And then I'm like, do you understand that, like, in order to do that, he would have to average like 340 yards passing a game for the next 15 years?
Right.
And he's less than 100 of that 28 right now?
I thought you meant what his age was.
I'm saying, but that's a factor too. So it's like that's what I'm talking. That's the vastness of what he has to, the scope of what he has to approach. And it's like, that's why it's so foolish. And we're seeing it right now because, John, for the first 4 years, it was he can do it with anyone. It's like doesn't matter who's in there, and like his athleticism is so superior that it it breaks, it puts him above everyone else. Well, I've seen a Super Bowl where his athleticism should have been a determining factor, and it wasn't. They got blown out 31-9. I've seen him struggle. I've seen him not throw the deep ball great. I've seen him do all these things that are just the opposite of what I've been told. And now all of a sudden, for the first time in his career, and this is the funniest part about it, John, for the first time in his career, he's had some adversity at the skill position position. I'm not talking about, people like, screaming about adversity. It's like, oh, he was injured and he came back. I'm talking about dealing with a subpar supporting cast.
Mhm.
And there's a couple ways you can handle it. It doesn't mean, look, I'm not, your numbers are going to go down, but it's how you handle it and how you react. And like everyone is making every excuse in the book for why he acted the way he did the other day. And one of the common ones was, well, look at the frustration he's dealing with. You're so frustrated, it's gonna cause you to completely lose your composure. That doesn't scream GOAT material to me, John.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
look, it sounds harsh, but that's the standard that you want to hold him to, and that's the standard he's going to be judged at. And right now, he's kind of failing that standard. So, it is what it is. It's tough. It's a hard sport to project, especially one so physical, and certainly one that, again, is. You brought up Mike Trout in baseball, and there's other examples in football where it's like, these guys looked great for 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden, boom, gone. I mean, just imagine what we were talking about Russell Wilson just a few years ago, and then he just disappeared off the face of the map and looked like he forgot how to play football. So, I don't know.
Yep.
We'll see how it all plays out. But anyways, that's going to do it for us here today. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll kind of get ready for week 15, and season's almost over. It's almost postseason time, and it's going to be fun. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow or Thursday.